Alright everyone, so in this lecture we're going to be exploring the business world of the late 1800s, early 1900s, around the turn of the 20th century. We'll be taking a look at some of the richest guys who really have ever lived in the United States, and they're getting their money by creating monopolies. So let's start to take a look at this. Now, business at the turn of the 20th century, our political system is really focused on this idea of laissez-faire. Laissez-faire is just a French word that means hands off. The government's not going to do anything to step in and regulate these businesses. They're not going to try to control them. They're going to let these businesses get as big as they can, and if they fail, they fail. They're not going to be bailing them out, but they're also not going to keep them. There's really no rules, right? There's no rules for these businesses. There's nobody stepping in as far as safety, about minimum wage, treating their customers fair, keeping competition going. The government has said we're not interfering. And this is kind of part of this entire idea of social Darwinism. Social Darwinism is this idea by a British philosopher called Herbert Spencer. Now he's going to take Charles Darwin's theory of evolution and he's going to strip out the part about the survival of the fittest, and he applies it to human society and not just natural world. So in this social Darwinistic type of thought, right, the big companies eat the little companies. There's a competition for resources, and those best fit to survive will survive. The other ones go the way of the dinosaurs. Right. There's also going to be this idea of Taylorism, and this is getting into the more manufacturing part of it. Taylorism, if you have an overbearing boss, somebody who's coming by and looking over your shoulder all the time, that's really scientific management. Scientific management had to deal with these jobs in these factories, and he wanted to apply mathematics, he wanted to apply science to the management of his company. So what he did is he took field trials of basically tested all of his workers, right? How quickly can you do this job? And then he basically took a little above the average, right? So if you can make 25 of these parts in 1 hour, right? He would take 25 as the baseline, and if you made more than 25, you would get bonuses. If you made less than 25, you get in hot water. And manufacturing techniques are going to start off kind of based around this whole scientific management idea, the assembly line, where the actual object is going to move down a line and the worker is only going to put one part of it together. It's going to revolutionize everything. It's going to be much quicker. The workers are going to be able to be paid less because there's not as much skill in what they're doing. Advertising is propping a lot of these businesses up because once we produce so much of the stuff by the machines, it comes to a point where we're really going to have to get people to buy a second one. We're really going to have to get people to buy things they don't need, which is basically what advertising is. You don't see advertising for water, right, because everybody needs water. You gotta advertise for something that they don't need. Create that false need. Debt. More people are going into debt. More people are borrowing from the banks, right? Especially to get these new things that the businesses are creating, and new inventions. This is the time period of the phonograph and the light bulb from Thomas Edison, right? The Wright brothers in 1903 with their Wright Flyer. Coca-Cola is coming about. All these carbonated beverages, and Alexander Graham Bell's telephone as well. Right, how these monopolies are going to form. There's two main ways. The first one's going to be this horizontal integration over here. So we have this slightly bigger than normal oil company, and they're being competed against. All right, so Be Greedy is being competed against by Second Best, and We Tried. Well, Be Greedy looks at this, and obviously he wants to take the competition out. So when he can, he buys out Second Best, and now Be Greedy is much bigger than it was before, and the only competition is We Tried. We Tried cannot compete with Be Greedy's prices anymore because they have such a large market share. They have like 75% of the world's oil supply. So it's not long before We Tried has to fold, or they accept whatever Be Greedy is going to offer them for their company, and bam, Be Greedy is the only supplier of oil. He has a complete monopoly now. Right, where he had been lowering his prices up here to compete against these other two companies, now he can jack his prices up to whatever he wants to. Right, so basically, horizontal is you're buying out your competition. Right. Over here with vertical integration, this is a way to control your cost. So we've got a steel company, I Am Rich Steel Company. Right. They have to buy certain things to make steel. Right. They've got to work with the railroads. The railroads are going to be in this for money too, so they're jacking the price up. Same thing with the iron mines, same thing with the shipping company, same thing with the coal mines. A vertically integrated company is going to buy the railroad, buy the iron mines, buy the shipping company, and buy the coal mines. So what they can do now, since they are not working for a profit motive here, right, they can drastically cut the cost of the steel. Right? Nobody else is going to be able to compete with how cheaply they can make a steel bar. If they're going to get more market share, then they can come over here and start horizontally integrating and buying out the other steel companies. The main monopolists we're going to talk about are these 6 individuals: Vanderbilt, Carnegie, Morgan, Rockefeller, Ford, Westinghouse. These last 2 aren't as big of monopolists as the other 4. These are really the main ones here: Vanderbilt, Carnegie, Morgan, and Rockefeller. The other 2 are just really big businessmen during this time period we need to cover. So Cornelius Vanderbilt. Right. He's going to be born Staten Island, New York. Right. His father runs a ferry across from Staten Island to New York City. Right. When he is 16, he borrows $100 from his mother to buy his first boat, and then he goes into competition against his father and with every other ferry boat. Right. It's going from Staten Island or New Jersey to New York City. Right. He becomes a huge force on the Hudson River. Then he buys ocean-going steamships and ones on the Mississippi River until he controls most of the shipping that's happening in the United States. There's something that he isn't going to be able to compete with, and he recognizes it. So right before the Civil War, he sells off all of his steamships, and then he takes that money and puts it into railroads. And he's going to own most of the railroads in the northeast of the country, 13 plus. Right. When he dies in 1877, he's got what amounts to now $2.3 billion. Right down here, this is his home in Rhode Island. His youngest son is going to build Biltmore House in Asheville. That's what you get for being the youngest son of Commodore Vanderbilt, is that large mansion, the largest house in the United States. He's called Commodore mainly because of his steamship fleet. Right. Andrew Carnegie, the second guy, probably the most important one. Our next DBQ is going to be based on this guy. Right? He is an immigrant. He was born in Dunfermline, Scotland, in half of a small weaver shop. He's going to immigrate to the United States. As a young child, he's going to work as a bobbin boy in a textile mill. Then he's going to become a telegraph operator. He learns Morse code, and that's going to be a valuable skill to him. Gets involved in railroads. And then he starts investing, and he focuses on steel. Right. When he gets his steel empire going, he goes and figures out the Bessemer process. Bessemer's in England. He kind of copies that process in the United States. He's going to lower his prices, right, by vertically integrating, going and getting the railroad, getting the coal fields, getting the iron mines. Pittsburgh is essentially Carnegie's town. Right? That's why the Pittsburgh Steelers are the Pittsburgh Steelers. In 1901, he's actually going to go to a dinner party with J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan asks him, "How much will you sell your company for?" He writes down a number, $1 billion, and actually J.P. Morgan accepts it. If he were alive today, his fortune would be around $300 billion. J.P. Morgan is from Connecticut. Right. He's known for taking over businesses, investing in them, and then changing the way they work, making them more streamlined, basically vertically integrating them. Right. He's going to be the master of this, and he does this for different companies. He takes over the New York Times, gets them going right. He's going to do that with the Carnegie Steel Company. He's making it bigger. He's integrating more companies into it, paying. He's actually going to be pretty good with his employees as well. He's going to be worth $1.4 billion if he was alive today. And over here, this is his house in New York City. JP Morgan is Morgan Chase is kind of an offshoot of his company. JD Rockefeller is going to be a huge businessman. This guy is going to own 90% of the world's oil supply through his company Standard Oil, which most of your gas stations owe their existence to. When he was young, he said he wanted to make $100,000 and live to be 100 years old. He gets the $100,000 plus a whole lot more, but he dies 2 years before he can live 100. He's going to be known for the oil company. He's horizontally. He's not making any friends. He's just going out there and buying out the competition. He's dropping his prices under what it costs. He's losing money just to make sure his competition goes out of business so he can then take them over. And he's going to be the richest one we'll see. $700 billion if he lived today. Henry Ford revolutionized in the car industry. He's going to come up with a mass-produced car, which is something we haven't seen yet. In the Model A, Model T comes first actually. He does this by making car manufacturing on the assembly line. He's going to pay his workers very well, $5 a day. Seems a little bit today. That's actually 3 times what any other car company is paying their workers. So what's going to happen? All the best auto workers from the other companies are going to come to work for Henry Ford. And he's going to have $200 billion if he lived today. Westinghouse, right? And that should say 1919 back there. All right, George Westinghouse is the electricity guy. He's going up against Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison of the Wizard of Menlo Park, right? One of the brightest inventive minds in American history. He's going up in direct competition against them, right? Thomas Edison created like the light bulb, but Westinghouse is going to create the power system on which that light bulb is going to work. There's going to be a battle called the War of the Currents between Edison's DC or direct current, Westinghouse alternating current. Alternating current is going to win out, and he's basically how those power lines that go to your house. You have George Westinghouse pretty much to thank for that. Right. There comes this idea of captains of industry or robber barons. If you take a look at these guys, they have positives, they have negatives. Captains of industry, they're out there, they're making the United States what it is economically. They created this industrial powerhouse. They're killing off these less efficient businesses, but they're creating this very, very strong economy. But also at the same time, they're doing this by doing some very shady things at times. They're not paying their workers well. They're not concerned with safety. They don't want any government regulation. They're creating monopolies that are stopping any competition. And then when they have their competition gone, they're jacking up the prices on everybody. So you can see these guys as captains of industry or robber barons. And the way you see them as that is probably whether you think about their philanthropy or not. Taking a look at the captains of industry side, all these guys with their money, they're going to be very generous at the end of their lives. JD Rockefeller, Colonial Williamsburg is essentially where he buys up the entire town and recreates that museum for the American people. Carnegie, he's going to build all of these libraries for people in the United States. He's going to create Carnegie Mellon University with his friend Andrew Mellon. Vanderbilt's creating Vanderbilt University. Carnegie actually going by his own idea of the gospel of wealth, right? He says that you should not give your wealth to your son or daughter. You should basically give it back to the community, right? Because you want your son or daughter to go out there and make their own money. And also you want to be a good steward of this money. You want to treat people right, but you want to have that control about how it is done. You think you know more about the best use of this money than people do. So connections to today, minimum wage. There's always this debate about what is a fair price for